Creative coding. Coding for kindergarten kids is actually quite simple. Children as young as 5 can already understand some of the basic coding concepts, even if they do not know what they are specifically. If you use the word algorithm with a 5-year-old, it probably will not mean much. What is an algorithm? An algorithm is a set of instructions. It is a set of step by step instructions. If you use the word algorithm with a 5-year-old, it probably will not mean much. However, they actually use algorithms on a daily basis, and the concept is easy to understand. The best way to start teaching coding is with a lesson on algorithms. An algorithm is an instruction given in order to complete a certain task and receive the desired result. An algorithm is an instruction given in order to complete a certain task and receive the desired result. Next comes sequence. 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 Sequence is basically completing a task in a certain order. So if we refer to algorithms above, it means putting those instructions in order. Take, for example, an algorithm to make your glass of chocolate milk. Instruction 1. Take a glass and keep it on the table. Instruction 2. Get a box of milk. Instruction 3. Cut open the box of milk. Instruction 4. Pour the milk into the glass. Instruction 5. Get a jar of chocolate powder. Instruction 6. Get a teaspoon. Instruction 7. Put a teaspoon of chocolate powder into the glass of milk. Instruction 8. Stir the milk using the spoon. Instruction 9. Remove the teaspoon from the glass of chocolate milk and keep it on the table. Instruction 10. Drink the glass of chocolate milk, sip by sip. So that was an algorithm. An algorithm is an instruction or a set of instructions given in order to complete a certain task and receive the desired result. Did you notice that sequence came naturally in an algorithm? Sequence is basically completing a task in a certain order. In coding, loops allow you to repeat something again and again. Loops will repeat until you give instructions for the computer to stop. In the chocolate milk algorithm, we could add a loop when it came to stirring of the chocolate milk. The instruction to be looped could be stir the chocolate milk in a clockwise direction. Now we can loop this instruction once, twice, thrice, or as many times as we want to. This is how in coding loops allow us to repeat something again and again. Loops will repeat until you give instructions for the computer to stop. One way of giving the computer an instruction to stop a loop is by specifying the number of times you want the loop to run. Decomposition. Decomposition means breaking down problems into smaller, more manageable steps. We can teach kindergarten students about decomposition by asking them to break down their everyday routines into smaller steps. In fact, decomposition is a weapon. In fact, whenever you are faced with a daunting task, decompose it. Break it down into smaller, more manageable tasks. Branching. Branching basically means checking conditions which determine the choice being made. So, in other words, making a decision depending on what is happening or what has happened. Think of the algorithm to reach your favorite supermarket. When you reach a certain point in the road, you see two roads, one going to the left and one going to the right. Branching is like this. In the middle of a set of instructions, you will have two choices, two options. Based on the end result that you want, you can choose either of the two options. That is what branching is all about. Branching basically means checking conditions which determine the choice being made. So, in other words, making a decision depending on what is happening or what has happened. So, dear teacher, as you implement sequencing, looping, decomposition, and branching in the activities that you do with your students, you are actually laying the foundation for creative coding. Let's think and reflect and learn through examples. When we ask our students to make an origami flower, we give them step by step instructions. Basically, we are exposing them to an algorithm that has a sequence. Looping. When you give the students an instruction, for example, to jump 5 times, clap your hands 3 times, skip 7 times, what are you actually doing? You are implementing a loop, a repeated instruction. Decomposition. You ask your students to draw a scenery. You decompose the scenery. First, you draw all the clouds in the sky, then, you draw birds in the sky, then, you draw all the trees, then, you draw a few houses. At the end of it, you have a lovely scenery. But how did you get that scenery? Using decomposition. You broke down the huge task of drawing a scenery into smaller, manageable tasks. Branching. A simple example of branching is when you ask your students to choose, for example, either between solving puzzles or building blocks. So, do you realize, dear teacher, how you are actually using algorithms, sequencing, loops, decomposition, and branching in your day to day activities as an educator? Now that you know what goes into teaching children creative coding, you can confidently say, yes, I love exposing my children to creative coding skills. The creative coding skills of algorithms, sequencing, looping, decomposition, and branching. In the comments, dear teacher, write one example each of how you have used algorithms, sequencing, looping, decompositioning, and branching in your day to day tasks and activities with your students. Thank you, dear teacher, for learning about creative coding. Thank you, Lord.